And now we want to hear from some of our local constituents here in California to talk about what they envision. How is this going to work in California, and what challenges are we facing? So I think what may be helpful for all of you is to have a sense of who we have up here on the panel. So I'm going to ask each of the gentlemen to just introduce themselves, who they're with, to give you a sense of their business operations, how large, how many employees. So we'll start with Oscar. Oscar, why don't you tell us a little bit about your operation and yourself?
Well, thank you, Cynthia. And again, I'd like to say thank you to Mark and ImmigrationWorks, and also for letting us all together. And thank you. Yeah, so sorry, Mike. Again, I'm just getting over a cold here. So, thank everybody else that came here today. So again, my name is Oscar Ramos. I'm here representing Bravo Ag Group. I'm president of Bravo Ag Group.
You guys can sure the microphones are close. They're having a hard time.
Does everybody hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm president of Bravo Ag Group, and Bravo Ag Group is an association that's made up of farm labor contractors and growers. And we as a group focus on better business practices by providing a safe work environment for employees, agricultural workers. And I'd like to say, though, one thing though I have for today, and I think this is maybe how our government, the federal government, might classify agriculture employees as unskilled. I started my career in agriculture as a farm labor, as a farm worker, and I tell you what, after I graduated from farm working, I went to Fresno State, and I think finals and midterms are a lot more a piece of a walk in the park compared to prudent vineyard, and ensuring that those vineyards are consistently pruned the way they need to be to achieve a consistent crop. So I would say it requires a tremendous amount of skill to prune a vineyard and also to support a family because of that work that's being performed. So that being said, I also like to acknowledge a couple people here. I'd like to acknowledge some of the members, farm labor contractors that are on board. If you guys would please stand up. Noe Cisneros, Freedom Ag, and Johnny Chavez, Cabo, Martin Solis. And if there's any other members here. And I'd like to say thank you, and because of their efforts in providing a safe work environment to their employees, they're also participating in building a better community. And again, backtracking a little bit, to be in Bravo Ag Group, you also have to represent and present stringent guidelines as far as safety goes. So all of our companies that are involved in Bravo also have certificates of compliance of recognition from CalSugar in California, and all of us have Golden Gate certificates, which means that we all meet the level of effective IPP programs, injury and illness prevention programs, and also heat and emergency plans and heat stress plans at the field and at the shop levels of the farms that we manage. Anyways, that's a little bit about what I'm doing here today. And also, one other person I'd like to recognize is Lupe Sandoval and Gosman. They're also part of California Farm Laborers Association, which is another association that I collaborate with. And combined with CFLCA, where's Lupe? Is Lupe here?
He was. Just walked out.
Where's Gosman? They both walked out? Okay. Well, anyways, combining those two associations, we represent indirectly our employees as well. So we represent 50,000 plus agriculture employees. It's huge. And with the efforts of CFLCA, they're also trying to promote better business practice at the farm labor community. And but they're more involved on the training and educating our farm workers. So there's a tremendous amount of agriculture employees that we hire to perform work with the growers that we contract with. And essentially, what is a labor contractor? Well, a labor contractor is a business or a person that contracts with the grower to supply labor. And we also supply labor. We ensure that our farms are in compliance with federal guidelines, state guidelines, local agencies, but also ensure that providing, again, a safe work environment and minimizing liability to our growers as well. So there's a lot of things that are done under being a farm labor contract. Not only that, we also recognize that we engage contract with growers that we have seasonal relationships with. Well, what about when that season's over? Our job also is to ensure that our workforce has a steady place to work. So there's all those dynamics at what it means to be a farm labor contractor, and I just wanted to share that with you today, that we hire, combined in the farm labor industry, we hire an enormous amount of farm workers, and we ensure that they have a safe work environment. So,
Oscar, can you talk to us a little bit about where you're getting currently your labor supply, and how is that working for you? What are some of the challenges you're facing in that regard?
Cynthia, our labor is coming from our region where we represent. Myself, I'm a farm labor contractor as well, I think I said that. I'm in 7 different counties. So we hire labor from those counties where we have a presence. The challenges have been that there's a lot less employees and people to hire because there's a lot less people there. Not only that, there's a lot of other crops that are coming into play that haven't been there in the past.
Are you finding that there's other industries that are competing for the same labor force that you're having challenges with?
Absolutely, Cynthia. Yeah, there's more industries now competing for labor, and you have that on top of not having an adequate supply.
Sal, why don't you give us a little background on you, your organization, how many employees you're working with?
Sure, thank you. It's on? Don't know if you can hear me. Is this? Yeah. It's not. Is this better? No. Let's try to get it moving. Well, thanks, Cynthia. I'm sorry, I represent, we're not a farm labor contractor, we're actually a farming company, farm management company, so we represent different landowners through 10 different counties in California. We are stretched from the Tehachapi's down in Kern County, 300 miles north, all the way to Yellow County. So what does it mean? Well, it means that we're the farm management company that utilizes a significant amount of labor. In our case, we utilize up to in excess of 2,500 laborers that are not directly employed by our management company or by the landowners that we represent. We utilize gentlemen like Oscar here and Stephen next to me. We're the farm labor contractors that supply, in essence, 99% of our labor through the course of the year. So that's where we're a little different, but obviously we have the same issues, not us directly as a management company, but the issues for farm labor contractors, in essence, of shortages of labor and all those pertaining to an owner-operator. There's a few farmers in the group that I've seen here that act as their own farm owner-operator and dealing with labor themselves, interacting as labor contractors themselves, have the issues. We don't have to have those issues directly ourselves, but indirectly we're having to deal with everything that these children have to deal with in terms of getting the labor needs on a timely basis to our ranches. So we're a little different, but again, because we are in 10 different counties, we're dealing with multiple labor contractors to satisfy those heavy needs of labor during the peak season.
Great, thanks, Al. Stephen, why don't you bring us home here with a little bit about you and your organization?
My name is Stephen Mascarenas. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to ImmigrationWorks, Fresno State, Dr. Welty, and the Bravo group. Like I said, my name is Stephen Mascarenas. I'm president of Mid-Valley Labor Services, Inc. We operate in about 18 different counties in California. We specialize predominantly in grapes, raisin, and wine. So we face many challenges. Certain areas of California, we find that there is a sufficient labor supply, whereas other areas we struggle to meet our labor criteria. It seems to be regional as far as maintaining our labor needs. Sometimes even in different regions, you have different wage scales. So it's easier to recruit workers in some of those different areas. Also, I serve as president of a sister company, which is MPM Farming Company as well. So we kind of have a unique perspective that we see both ends of the spectrum, whereas we are also a farming company, but also a labor contractor. So we understand the needs that the growers have, sometimes the stress levels they have, because a lot of them have perishable fruits, perishable crops. And we have a limited time frame that we can get those crops to the marketplace so that producers can either make their wine or send those products to the marketplace. So that's some of the issues that we are faced with in California, is that we are predominantly a state that produces perishable products. And so adequate labor, adequate workforce is very, very important to the success not only of the farm labor contractor, but also to the grower.
Thank you, gentlemen. I think one thing we want to kind of talk about is we heard Lee talk about the model that he's developed to work with the H-2A visa program. I'm just curious, Oscar, you had a few comments on perhaps trying to make the H-2A visa work program work. Are any of you currently using that program? And if you are, we'd love to hear about that. If you're not, I'm curious as to why not or what obstacles.
I'll start off first. I think that one of the biggest challenges is the financial aspect of implementing a program like H-2A. And obviously, we're not in that type of a program. We'd like to be able to say that in the future we could take advantage of a program that would be able to facilitate agricultural workers and people that have the desire to work here in this country. The big challenge is, well, all those little details, and I know Lee can tell you that he has to hire 10 people to do so. And at this point, it's just it's a financial decision, and it's very difficult to do so.
Sal?
Given we're in so many different counties, the beauty of using a farm labor contractor, obviously they're the clearinghouse of supplying the labor, and it's obviously something that would have to take care of that. If we had in return and become our own farm labor contractor, we'd be dealing with labor demands at peak times. We're in a great farm as our predominant crop, and during the peak season, we're in excess of 2,500 employees. If we had to go out in those 10 counties and recruit all those employees and in that fashion, whether it's an H-2A program or a like program, would be very cumbersome and taxing to us, and obviously we'd have the staff for it. So the services that these gentlemen provide and farm labor contracts as a whole is a big benefit to a grower of our size and even to the small fellows. Now we do have some year-round employees that are still employed by farm labor contractors, but in essence still work on our ranches year-round, and those are programs that we can see fit, whether it's an H-2A program or not. We could recruit a fixed amount of bodies to say we're going to need 50 mechanics for different shops. A program like that would be sufficient, but of course, coming into the pruning season, we have to spike up to 1,600, 1,800 people. It would be difficult to recruit those kind of numbers on a timely basis, unbeknownst to us when that season is going to actually start, whether it's a pruning season or harvest season. It's a perishable good, it's a perishable commodity, and just simply wouldn't know. So supply and getting paperwork on a timely basis would be difficult.
Currently, no, we do not use the H-2A program. We did look into it, and like Oscar had mentioned, it is very cost prohibitive. The other problem that we found with the H-2A program, specifically with California, is the liability issues of labor camps and whatnot, increased problems of litigation within California, has made it almost impossible to operate and maintain a labor camp. The regulations that are required, quite frankly, require extra staff and personnel and oversight because of the mandates of the regulations that are placed on us. And our profit margin is very thin. And just like Lee had mentioned, at the end of the year, you hope you made money. And to inquire more regulation and possible litigation, it gets to the point that it's not worth it. One of the things that I was in listening to the discussion about a guest worker program is, I think one of the things that we're looking for is simplicity. And I think the fear that all of us have about the federal government coming up with a, master plan for everybody is one thing that they don't understand, and this is one of the beauties of our founding fathers that they understood, is that when they created this country, they didn't just create a federal government, but they created a series of state governments. And the reason why they did that is because they knew that those state governments would understand the needs of their people, that a federal government would never understand. And for me to go and to submit an application to a bureaucrat in Chicago, who first of all, has probably never been in a farm, and second of all, does not understand what my needs are, and then to them to make a decision based on what their perception of farming is and what their perception of my needs is ludicrous. In all due respect to the gentleman here, my needs in California are a lot different than your needs in North Carolina. My needs in California are a lot different than your needs in, let's say, the state of Washington, or whatever state we're talking about. We have different challenges. We have different regulations. We have different requirements. And I would like to see a program that has a state-federal partnership, in that I can go to my state government, whether it be EDD or whomever, and petition them for my workers. And then let the state work out the details with the federal government on how we're going to get those workers to us. Because basically, if I go to my local EDD department, they're going to understand my needs more than somebody in Chicago would understand my needs.
Interesting in terms of the EDD playing that part. Sal and Oscar, I'd like to hear your thoughts on how that, some people talk about an offset to E-Verify. I mean, we know E-Verify is going to hit us eventually, and we've all kind of thought about what that would mean for our industry and for our businesses. So what would you see in terms of a potential offset, or what would that simple model be in your opinion?
Well, I think I know Stephen's correct, and just adding one more thing too is just timing. What Sal said, there's a timing issue that, according to those H-2A provisions, you have to market for your employees when you need them, and I think that's another big misconnection with the reality of what's going down, or what's happening at the ground zero level. I would say, who wants to really do more, implement more programs that the government wants us to do? It's very stringent. It's again comes back to financial decisions. We ultimately have to pass on those increases in operating costs and so on and so forth. But we still aren't at those in maybe implementing an E-Verify program if there's an offset to that, like you just said. There has to be a way to also have employees here that can become documented employees. Otherwise, a program like E-Verify just doesn't work.
What are some of the other components you would see to an offset, aside from some type of path utilization, to address the fluctuation in the needs of your workforce with this season, the fact that you do need to make sure that you have the workers there when you need to prune, when you need to harvest?
respond to that. You know, it's interesting that the term being used today and thrown around is what's the future flow. You know, Brian, I think you gave us the number of 1 million ag workers here and the need for 1 million ag workers, whatever that number may be. What's interesting is we have to deal with the 1 million that are currently here. And I think, Stephen, you made reference to the fact that you think this labor supply is unbalanced now. Whether it's balanced or not, it may be unbalanced in the future, but if it's balanced today, that's great. But let's put a program in place that's going to keep the red tape and the bureaucracies out of these guys being able to legally work. The FLC, I'm talking about current farm labor employees. And if you do that, you won't have to worry about this future flow. I think one thing that we seem to miss here is we don't go talk to the farm labor. I talk to farm laborers every day. I'll see 500 farm laborers on my way home today. One thing that we don't do is we don't understand the network that they have. When we talk about future flow, let's open it up to the people that are here now. Give them the ability to work outside of this path of legal residency. They simply want to work. I don't know how many of us in this room have made a trip down to not just Mexico, further south, and there's people that were willing to make the move north because of the opportunities, work opportunities, and they're not afraid of working in ag. And in doing that, you open up the network to getting word back home, giving people an avenue to come work in California or any parts of the United States, and that's going to help this future flow issue. That's how they've been doing this for 50 years, for as long as I can remember. As my friends, someone alluded to, the amnesty law of '86 that passed didn't fix future flow issue. Guess what? It fixed my problem. I became a permanent resident in '86. The mistake was there wasn't enough ag discussion. There wasn't enough discussion being spread among the ag community and farm laborers as a whole, what that represented, what opportunities you were going to have in agriculture. That was the miss. So they didn't address the issue of future flow. Well, that again, you fix future flow by fixing the problem you have today, because if there's a path to come and work here legally in agriculture, I'm just referring to agriculture as a whole, you will continue to get people coming to work in agriculture in the United States.
Oscar, do you agree that the future flow can be addressed by addressing some type of path to a legalization here?
Well, I think there's obviously an obvious purpose why we're here. And purpose would be, in my opinion, that we're all here to try to solve a problem that's been going on. It goes further than '86, it sounds like. And the issue is, how do we maximize our communities, and how do we keep that economical standpoint rolling? How do we keep things going? Well, a big component to what we're doing as a farm labor contractor is to be able to hire and keep our employees busy, and also to continue growth. And exactly how we're going to do that, I think that's the discussions that we're trying to get across today. Is it being, I know Brian had great ideas and great programs that they're working with. Is it going to bring people to the table, like Sal said? Well, that's the question at hand. And I think that we really need to focus on how we're going to get all that done soon, because we're seeing that every single season comes around, we're seeing that we have less and less people and more work. So what are we going to do?
What are the other industries that you think are taking some of your workforce that you're now competing with?
So again, it's a combination of a lot of, I would say, newer industries that are expanding their operations. Would be the berry industry. Maybe citrus is seen in my immediate area, and that Fresno to Fresno County in that immediate area. So I would say just to name a few, just those are increasing substantially.
Stephen, you talked about how you haven't really experienced an issue at this point with future flow or with consistent flow of employees or laborers, what are your thoughts on what would an offset to the E-Verify or a new program that is a modification of the H-2A program look like that would address and ensure that you have the workforce that you're going to need going forward?
Well, first of all, you know, we all in this country understand that we do have a immigration problem, and that we have an illegal immigrant problem. And I think we've also all have come to the understanding that we're just not going to deport 12 million people. You know, I think the political will is not there, first and foremost. And for the most part, Americans are good-natured people. You know, we always seem to fight for the little guy, to be on the side of those that need our help and assistance. My problem is, yeah, what next? What are we looking at? You know, in 1986, when I was in this business, I was told that this was the end-all to our labor needs and to our problem in the south border. That this was going to fix it. And I think the biggest fear of some of us today is this like Groundhog Day all over again? Are we looking at the same situation, the same problems, reinventing themselves 10 years from now? You know, after we thought we had found a fix, all of a sudden now we find that we have anywhere from 12 to 18 million undocumented people in the United States. So what is that saying? We just go and throw something against the wind and sign it because, you know, we want to try to appease a certain group, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, we have 35 million people here illegally. I mean, we have to come up with a serious plan and, you know, serious ideas. When in 1986, when America was passed, I lost about 60% of my workforce because they went to other industries. Prior to that, people were afraid to walk the streets. Illegal immigrants were afraid to even go to the store because their biggest fear was being hit by the Border Patrol. After 1986, whether they were here legal or illegally, that fear factor was gone. And their mindset changed. They realized that they could go beyond agriculture. Heck, I have a guy that used to work for me in the fields that's now a dealer in Atlantic City in a casino. Because the opportunity was better and it got him out of the fields. He was his thinking. So, in saying that, you know, we've got to have something that's going to meet the needs of agriculture, because agriculture is unique. It's a different way of life. It's a different job responsibility. And not everybody's going to want to do agriculture. And so we are going to be dependent on a workforce that is willing and ready to meet our needs in agriculture. My fear is if, you know, we do comprehensive immigration reform, we're going to be back again with that 60% factor that's going to leave. One of the problems, Cynthia, that we're experiencing with our labor force is our labor force isn't coming back from Mexico. And why is that? A lot of them are leaving because, number one, of the border situation that's going on with the gang wars. There's a fear of crossing. There's a fear of being captured by a rival gang or whatever. The other thing that I think we have to address and we have to understand is Mexico's economy is growing. Right now, they're growing at 3.2 to 3.6% GDP. Whereas in America, we're barely squeezing out 1.1, 1.2%. So the opportunities in Mexico for their workers is increasing, while our opportunities in the United States are decreasing. So we also have to face that reality. You know, if we're going to want workers, we got to make the jobs attractive to them, and we got to be able to meet the needs that they face as well as our own.
Sal, what are your thoughts on if you were brought into a discussion about what needed to be changed with the current program? What do you think would be the first priority that you would want to see revised or in some way changed?
obviously the biggest challenge is it's just the complexity of such a big program. It's a federal program. We're talking about what would work in California. That'd be the first thing. It'd have to be something that would be developed specifically for California. And you know, maybe we're siding towards a certain part of California, but we're sitting in the heart of the San Joaquin Valley. We're sitting in the heart of agriculture. It's just that's where we're at. So it would have to change. It would have to be more conducive to what really works here in the San Joaquin Valley and what works in California. How are they coming over now? You know, we know there's less laborers coming, but I think you give them a path that are going to come. You know, I joke about these walls we put in the border. Just walls. They're going to keep coming. They're going to keep coming. We're making $8 to $10 a day, $8 to $12 in some cases. I was in the state of Sonora just this past year, making $12, $18 a day. They can come here and make $100 a day. You can put the biggest walls. You can do that, but they're not coming through the walls. They're going over and under the walls. They'll keep coming if there's work here. Show statistics, they're not coming. They're not coming because of current unemployment situation. There's no work. Are we losing them to other industries? Sure, we're losing some to other industries, but a lot of majority of them are going to stay in ag. They enjoy ag. It's a highly skilled situation. We can classify them as non-skilled, underskilled, whatever the case might be, but this is ag. It's highly skilled, and if the pay is here and they can make a living, they're going to keep coming.
I know I mentioned earlier when Dan was talking, and well, why doesn't H2A work? Why can't that be modified? And there is that discussion in element of maybe it does need to be overhauled, and a new department needs to take over and say, hey, look, we're going to take ownership and make this work for everybody, make it work for the country. And I think in my opinion, it'd have to be something that can streamline all those things and be able to say, well, you know what, people, wherever you're looking for work, wherever your nationality, whatever nation that we're drawing employees from, to say, well, you know what, we have employers that are willing to hire, and they're well-to-do employers like our labor contract community, and the well-to-do guys that are here today that are hiring agriculture workers. So there is a need for an H2A type of a program, obviously, without all those provisions and all those details that make it very difficult.
What are the loans that make it difficult for you currently that are precluding you from using it? Is it just the housing, or are there other provisions within H2A that are?
Well, I know that I could say, hey, Lupe Sandoval or Brian, can you please, chime in on this one right now? Off the top of my head right now, transportation, housing. But Stephen said that then we open up all those other areas of liability.
I just think the thing that concerns me is the amount of time that is required from the moment that you submit the application to the time that you're finally told, yeah, you qualify. And there's no guarantee. And for us, time is critical, especially in perishable fruits and vegetables and whatnot. We don't have the convenience of time. And in essence, again, we're at the mercy of a bureaucrat trying to understand our industry and our businesses and our needs. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of my fellow contractors and growers have not used that system because, first of all, there's no guarantee you're going to qualify. Second of all, the bureaucracy of it all just makes it so unappealing and unapproachable.
So what I'm hearing then for California is, with the perishable products that we have and with the perishable crops that we have here, one of the main things that California would need to have in whatever program is brought to the table is a flow of labor that's going to be there when we need them. We don't want to have a program that's going to have several steps that will result in employees or laborers showing up 2 weeks too late for us. We need to have a program that's streamlined so that we can have the workforce there when we need them.
You know, there's simple solutions, but the problem is we never get simple answers. Yes, you know, we would have to have a program that's streamlined. And, you know, that can be adequately done through our states. You know, we can have a series where you as a grower or an employer can be pre-approved if you meet the criteria. Number one, that you are an agricultural grower. Number two, that you are in compliance with federal and state laws. Number three, that you have a proven safety record with your employees. And, you know, that you're basically not a felon or somebody that's that shouldn't be in the industry. I think once you can meet that criteria, you're put in a system in which you are an authorized agricultural employer. Then that gives you the opportunity at will, when you foresee a need or have a need, you bypass a lot of bureaucracy. You're already in the system. And you know, it seems like we try to reinvent the wheel over and over and over again with the bureaucracies that we have. And you know, let's simplify it. Let's work with, like I said, with federal and state agencies to help simplify the issue.
So what are your thoughts of trying to simplify it by having some type of an authorized agricultural employer program, like a certification program?
Absolutely, because it's so time sensitive, and I'll just share with you our position. Come July, and the commodity we're in, we blow a whistle and 500 guys show up. I mean, it's an amazing sight, and if we didn't have the ability to do that, we'll harvest 15,000 acres over a 3-week period, a 3-week window. So that supply of labor needs to be readily available. How we clear all those individual laborers to become eligible to that point in time is also time sensitive, because it may not be July 15th, it may not be August 1st. It could be a 3-week window where that perishable good is either mature enough to be harvested or not. So if you have a 3-week clearing house, a clearing delay, then it's problematic. But do you bring in the employee? I think one of the gentlemen claimed that he doesn't want his employees to be there 2 weeks. There's an associated cost to that. And who's going to carry that burden? Is the farm labor contractor or the owner operator going to carry that burden of having these guys wait around? Are they an employee at that point in time, or do you lose them to other industries where there's going to be work? So the time sensitivity of a perishable good is it's key. It's key. And just having that supply of labor readily available is going to help a lot of growers and farmers here in California. It's a definite need, and we're going to continue to have the need.
We talked about how in their program they were actually able to have the laborers move from one grower to another. If we were to develop some type of an authorized ag employer system, do you think it would be conceivable to have these laborers, after the 3 weeks that they're there for your harvest south, move on to Osford or move on to Stephen? Is that something that you think would be viable here in California?
Absolutely. We've had that discussion here with the most board member. The key is, what do we do with these gentlemen after we've given them employment for a month? Would we like to move them to the system? Our company, we are at liberty of actually moving the majority of our labor through the system because we're stretched in those different counties. Now, someone may ask a question, why'd you do that? We did it for that same reason. We can utilize the resource, and that's the human resource, that's the labor, but you can utilize all your equipment. So we're in essence doing that. You get to a point where I can't take people out of Kern County and move them over to Lodi. It's just too much of a drive. But we will utilize labor over a 2-hour radius, because one is you're offering longer-term employment. It doesn't have to be a 3-week window. It can become a 2-month window or a 10-week window. And that becomes real money for these farm labor. So that's And then that's the beauty of having to work with multiple contractors. We do overlap in different counties. And if there is another program that we can start pooling some of that labor source, it would help. It would be a great benefit to growers that are positioned throughout the different state. That's, you know, we're not like most small farmers, but yeah, if there was a co-op of farmers that could utilize a shared pool of labor, guess what? Those guys would probably sleep a lot better. And we're getting a situation where that's exactly what they're doing. I'll get a call from growers, neighbors in certain counties that say, are you having a labor problem? No, I don't have a labor problem. Why? I'm moving my labor from county to county. And they're getting, the small growers getting squeezed out. The labor supply is just getting tighter because those laborers actually want to work longer. We do that with pruning. They'll move from county to county. So a program like that could be viable potentially. It would just be a collaborative effort on many fronts.
You know, Brian Little had a very interesting concept, was employee-employer contract. And, you know, again, I keep referencing back to, you know, state involvement. I think having an employer-employee contract would be a good start. Number one, again, you go to your local state. When you get into an employee-employer contract, that employee is assigned to you. You have to make sure that you're meeting all the criteria for that employee. And then when the time comes that your work is finished, you no longer need the assistance, then that employee has the option of going back and finding out what growers in the area do need assistance. We build an exchange system within our EDD department, whereas there's other growers that have made petitions. You know, one of the other things too is it gives control of labor back to where it needs to be, back in the hands of the farmers, and the farm labor contractors, and the ag employers, not into the federal government. And number two, it gives us a reasonable way of knowing where these people are, and knowing, you know, what's happened to them. You know, today we don't even know half the people that are in our country. And this gives us a reasonable way of knowing who's in our country, where they are, who they're working for, and then, you know, make a system where after a certain individual's done working for me, he has 15 days to report to a state agency to say, hey, look, my employer's finished. Is there work available with another approved employer? And then they would be able to assist him to find the new employment, or, you know, they'll go back home. And most of the guys, and Sarah hit it right on, he says, you know, oftentimes the people that should be in this discussion are the least, and that's the farm worker. You know, half the times we don't go out and talk to see what their needs are, what their ideas are. You know, one of the things I find is a lot of them want to come work the system and they want to go home. They have family, they have relatives, they have children, they have wives, mom and dad. But they just want an ability to be able to come back and know that they're going to have a job again. And, you know, we got to find a way to facilitate that for them. And take away the barriers that they face, having to bribe somebody to bring it across the country where their lives are threatened. You know, having to risk, you know, conditions that none of us would want to be exposed to. Let's facilitate a way that they can come here safe and legal. And, you know, and it meets all of our needs, not just agriculture, but all industries. And it gives us a sense of security because then we know who's in our country and who is not.
I was going to say a product of that may be a more secure border. Oscar, with the number of employees that you have working through Bravo, I'm interested in hearing about how your thoughts on this type of workflow within your organization. Are your laborers moving from one crop to the other? Is that something you're facilitating within your organization? Is it working?
Well, I'm going to take a step back to that question. And I think we've got to understand that, you know, labor industry, labor contractors are already scrutinized by almost all level of government, you know, local, state, and federal governments. Not only that, but adding to what Steve said was that, you know, people are coming here legally through legal means. So not only does that get compounded, well, now we have people here that can't document themselves, can't get a driver's license, and that's huge. Right now we're seeing a lot less supervisors in positions where they're having to supervise duties in the fields and within their crews that they can't get transportation authorized. They can't get the documentation that they need to be in compliance. So a lot of our contractors are facing those issues. So that's what's going on right now, is that we have that problem that's not going away. And it's here in California or North Carolina. We're going to see it happening everywhere in the nation. So I guess the real idea and the take-home idea is that it's happening right now, and it's making our jobs as contractors very, very difficult. We don't have that available and that a documented worker to abide by those federal, state, local laws. So it makes our jobs as contractors and the other contractors that we represent more difficult, very difficult. Now, coming back to your question, we do have that level as a contractor that not only do we contract with one grower that only meets 500 employees in that recruiting season, but then my job and our job and the train of thought with our contractors that are in our associations, that we also have to learn to minimize those seasonal variances within our industry. So that doesn't mean that now, before maybe in the past, just in the vineyard industry was okay. Well, now we have to make sure that we have other industries where we can say, well, this is the amount of people that we have working at our company. Now let's move into another area so that we can always maintain that level of labor, so that, again, it satisfies our contract with our growers.
I'd like your thoughts on, if you went the route of some type of a authorized ag employer, who would that responsibility lie with in terms of getting that certification? Would it be with the grower? Would it be with the farm labor contractor?
I think that's a very good question. I think both.
Real simple for us to be a farm labor contractor. Because again, we want them to be the clearinghouse. That would expedite the whole process. Obviously the size of our operations would really need to say that, but if I was a small owner operator and was running a few hundred acres or a couple thousand acres and needed to have a staff of 50, obviously my position would be a little different, but those fellows with the staff of 50 have to find year-round work for these guys, and oftentimes that's at the expense of the bottom line. It's hard to farm. So in this case, based on our size and peak demand, it does, for liability and really just the access to labor. The farm labor contractor would be the clearinghouse, to know that we're contracting them to supply labor, skilled labor, for a contracted job. Obviously we would say we need vineyards pruned. We would expect them to bring pruners. We wouldn't expect them to bring tractor drivers. Those are the challenges.
Steve, what are your thoughts on that? Who would be the responsible entity for getting that authorization? Grower, the contractor?
I think both. We understand the needs. I mean, a company that like CellWorks has a tremendous need for a lot of bodies, a lot of workers. A grower down the street who may only need 5 or 6 guys may not need a labor contractor. So I think that both the grower and the farm labor contractor need to be the ones that aggressively get the workforce.
Oscar, do you agree? You talked about it being both. Would it be maybe dependent on the size of the grower and their needs versus?
I think there's a combination of a lot of things, and obviously, California labor contractor has those dynamics to say, well, you do need this many people, and we do have that labor pool for you, and next season we'll have that labor pool for you as well. Because not only did we do your contract and ensure that our contract with you was fulfilled, but we also have numerous other contracts throughout the year. And and we were able to maintain our labor force by having other commodities within that within our model business. So,
in regards to who employs the labor, whether it's a grower, farmer, or contractor, the beauty of having a program that will work is if you're a small farmer and you need your staff of 10 for 4 months, guess what? They just like displacing those 10. If there's an outlet to say, you know, I'd like to get my 10 back, so I'm going to hook you up with this other grower or farmer contractor, then it gives those 10 a home to go to. So regardless of who's employing them directly, it would be ultimately relevant. I think what we're trying to do is create a program that gives us a steady supply of labor and allows us to better manage our labor pool if the shortages becomes an issue.
So again, coming back to that real quick, Cynthia, would be that I believe that the labor contractor also has that level of ability to be responsible for providing those jobs to all those people.
I think we have just a couple of minutes left. We'll open it up to questions if anyone has any.
Mr. Ramos, you mentioned something about documentation for workers, but it wasn't clear. Are you? Is this actually? Okay. Were you talking about documentations and licenses for your workers? You mentioned supervisors not being able to do certain things, but you mean the contractors not having driver's license, or the supervisors not being licensed, or their workers?
In general, in the industry, the supervisor at the supervisor level.
What about them? They don't have what?
That we're seeing it that it's difficult for them to be able to get driver's license if they don't have a way to document that. Okay. Does that answer your question?
That's it, okay.
Question in the back?
Yeah, this is a comment as much as a question in relation to what Jason said earlier about housing, what you're talking about now with housing and transportation. And I wanted to call your attention to a new initiative that's being started by the State Board of Agriculture and California CDFA Secretary Karen Ross to create a statewide multi-stakeholder leadership panel to examine these two issues of housing and transportation and to develop a set of recommendations to start to address them. And my name is Dan Sherman. I'm with Ag Innovations Network, and we've been hired by the state to put this panel together. And so I'm here today to start an outreach effort, identify people who need to be on this panel. So I welcome your input. I've got some flyers on the front table about this initiative. I've got a few of you in the room that I already want to talk to. So if you're interested about it, please see me, and be happy to tell you more about this effort.
Any other questions?
Oscar, you mentioned one of the challenges that faces the farm workers isn't just their status of legal, undocumented, but also their ability to drive and their dependence on maybe a raitero or somebody else out there. Several other states, Washington, New Mexico, Illinois, Utah, allow individuals to get a driver's license regardless of their status in that state. I believe there's an AB 60 being proposed by Assemblyman Louis Alejo, which would allow workers, undocumented residents, to get a driver's license. Would this be something that would help your workers or help workers in the state of California? And would you guys be behind that kind of legislation?
Well, I think Steve might want to add to that here in a second, but I would believe so too. I mean, Luca, that's, because your level of work in those areas, it is needed very much.
Steve?
Yes, I would be in favor of that for two reasons. Number one, they are already on the roads driving. Let's get them certified, put them through the examination process that we have to go, show their ability to drive, have them get insurance. It's a public safety issue. We know they're on the roads, and it's a public safety issue. But it is cumbersome on the workers to get to work. It is a serious issue. And for an employer to provide transportation. Again, you know, the liability is very high, and the requirements to be able to transport are very difficult. So it would make it a much easier process if the worker had his own means, his own vehicle to go to work versus having to pay on somebody else, who in some cases may be taking advantage of them. It does happen in the industry.
So coming back to that, yeah, I think that would be, I would say, imperative, but also it doesn't solve the problem, the overall problem why we're here. But it is needed.
Well, thank you all. Thanks ImmigrationWorks for facilitating this discussion. Thanks Bronco Wine for the sponsorship. Oscar, Sal, and Stephen, thanks for your input.